992.2 exhaust installation by Sharkwerks. Here are the tools required to remove the bumper cover and install the exhaust on this car. We also recommend having a space set aside for the parts and possibly using blue painter's tape on the fenders and things that are painted to protect the surfaces. First, get in the car. On the door sill, press the rear switch to pop the engine cover. Now, without pressing the brake pedal, press the engine start button. This will start the ignition but not the car. Then, on the center screen, choose the car icon at the bottom left and scroll down to spoiler and click that. This will raise the wing so you can continue removal. First, remove these light covers by lifting them vertically. They're held in place by 3 little nubs, and there's one of these on each side of the car. Next, we're going to remove the upper light bar, which is held in place by 6 T30 screws. After the screws are removed, you can pull the light back a tiny bit, and be careful. This will let you access the connectors on both sides. The connector is green with a red lock on the bottom. If you push the lock toward the car, then press it upward, it will release the connector and you can pull it away from the light. Do the same thing for both sides of the car and then carefully set the light somewhere. Next, we'll remove the tail lights. These are held on by 3 T30 screws each. 2 of the screws are black and 1 is gray on the outside. The gray screw has a little cylinder running through it, so make sure when you remove that screw you also remove the cylinder. Also remember when you reinstall these things to put them in the right place. Next, take a small slotted screwdriver, just a very small one without a sharp point, and you'll find this little lock here on the inside of the light. It's hard to see. There it is. When you press that down, it releases a lock that lets you remove the light. Be careful because this light's going to be very tight. Pull it straight back, making sure not to damage any paint. And now we have another electrical connector. This time it's red, or brown, but it works just like the other one. Remove both lights and store them somewhere very carefully. Next, we have to remove the electrical connectors. This one pivots and pops out really easily. Once again, a red lock, squeeze it together and pull it apart. On the other side, there's an antenna. This connector is white. In the middle, on the outer side by the passenger,
There we go.
there's a little button in the middle you can press. That lets you release it.
A little tab.
So press that down and pull it apart.
Inside there, see it.
Okay, no, it's one antenna.
We're almost done. Just kidding. So now we remove 2 shiny silver screws, T30s again, from the sides of the bumper cover. And there's 2 more shiny T30 screws on this bracket. And then finally, 2 more T30 screws, this time black at the center. So just remember that black screws go in the center when you reassemble it.
Oh, so these little
This little lock here holds the bumper cover on and helps position it. So make a note of that later, but keep it loose for now. Now we have to remove the fender liners from the car. This is also how you access the air filters in case you didn't know. Start by removing the 4 T25 screws on each fender liner. There's also a 10mm nut that's on a stud in the back. And finally, a T30 screw on the underside. When you remove that T30 screw, just keep in mind that there's actually 2 T30 screws down there. One goes to the bumper cover and one goes to the fender liner. Since we're going to be removing the bumper cover, it's fine if you remove both of those, but just keep that in mind. Also keep in mind that the T25s are only used on this fender liner, so don't use them anywhere else when you reinstall things later. There's the stud. You also have to pop it off to clear the stud. There's the T30. And when you remove the fender liner, pull it straight down. It has a small loop that positions it.
And then it has a weird loop at the top.
Here it is. You can see the loop at the top. Now we're going to remove the other side. You could remove the wheels here, and that probably would help, especially if you're going to be changing the air filters anyway, or you have another reason to remove the wheels. Next, we're going to remove 8 T30 screws, starting with this one on the bottom inside of the bumper cover. And then we have to pull this fender liner up and out of the way to get to the second T30 screw, where it attaches to the quarter panel. So that would be 2 per side of the car, or 4 screws total. Now we have 2 more T30 screws on each side of the car. One runs almost a few inches from the bottom of the bumper toward the back of the car, and the other is about 3/4 of the way up the bumper cover and runs at about a 45-degree angle toward the back of the car. So if you remove 2 of those from each side of the bumper cover, now you would have 8 screws from this step. With the car a little higher, you can access the bottom of the bumper cover, where there are 8 more screws to remove. This one actually went to the fender liner, but there's 3 more here in the middle. These are black screws. Also, ignore the outer 3 screws, which you'll see. These actually assemble the bumper cover itself. These 3 here, don't remove those. So if you remove 3 black screws on each side of this bumper cover, then there's 2 more in the middle. That would be 8 screws. Notice that these are different. The 2 at the center are machine screws without a tip. So make sure to reinstall them in the correct place later. So after these screws, there is no more hardware holding the bumper cover on. You should lower the bumper to a reasonable height, and if you need a second person to help you, it's a good idea. Be really careful of the paint on the next step, but you want to peel the edges of the bumper cover off where the lights were attached, and then pull the bumper cover straight back to remove it. Make sure to have a route planned on where you're going to bring it to, and we recommend setting it on a soft surface, since sometimes it's painted or at least fragile. There's your intercoolers. Now you can see your intercoolers. This is also the 15-mile-an-hour crash bumper. This is going to be removed with 4 13mm bolts. So get an extension and remove all 4 of these bolts on each side. So 8 bolts total. It won't fall off because it has a little piece here to hold it in place. This bumper isn't very heavy, so don't worry too much about it, but you have to lift it up and off the car. It actually has a gasket on the bottom where it meets the intercoolers. Now we can see the exhaust, so we're almost done. Maybe take a second to marvel all the modern technology here and design that went into your car. The packaging is absolutely crazy on these 992.2s. Now with the car in the air, you want to disconnect the electrical connectors on the exhaust valves. Once again, they have a locking system like we've explained a few times. So you have to pull the lock back, which is gray this time, and then push it up and out of the way to unlock it from the car. You'll notice when you do the driver's side, it's a little more accessible. You can actually see it, so it makes it a little easier to figure out how it works. So maybe remove that one first if you're unsure. Also, these connectors are clipped into something, I believe, so make sure you release that. You want to spray penetrating oil on every exhaust bolt. This is just a good practice in general. It really does prevent a lot of bolts from breaking. So lube up everything really well and then spray oil into the sleeve clamp, which is going to come off. Now we're going to remove these 13mm nuts that hold the sleeve clamps on. So just remove the nuts completely from the sleeve clamps and then pop the carriage bolts off. Also keep in mind your sharkwerks exhaust is going to come with new bolts and new nuts, which these often corrode. Now what he's doing here is spreading apart the clamps to make sure that they can get off the car. He's putting the sleeve on the outside where the catalytic converter is, and the clamp itself on the inside, so there's a gap here. Once a gap is created, you can now remove the muffler once you remove the hanging brackets, which are these here. These are 6mm bolts. So loosen these up. And actually, if you remove them all together, it's not going to fall off the car. Push it together and remove the spring. Now you can wiggle these straps up and out of the way. Make sure they get off the hanger in the back of the engine, which is what they're stuck on. Just completely remove them like this. Now with a little wiggling, you should be able to get this muffler out of the car. And it'll basically come straight out. Sometimes one side will hang a little more than the others. With the muffler on the ground, remove the 3 T30 screws on each side that hold the valve in, and grab this spring. We recommend zip tying this to the muffler so you don't lose it because you're not going to need it anymore. Put the T30 screws back into the muffler so you don't lose them. Then do the same for the other valve actuator. Don't forget that spring. The sharkwerks exhaust ships with these nuts installed, so remove them. Then put the actuator into place over the delete and reinstall the nuts. When you tighten these up, don't put them too tight. They're very small bolts, so they could break easily, so just snug them up good. These brackets will simulate the valve, so the car won't have any error codes. Now take the sleeve clamps and actually put the clamps themselves onto the sharkwerks exhaust, but leave the sleeves on the outside of the catalytic converters like they were before. The tip part of the sharkwerks exhaust goes up and the X part goes down, so the tips wrap around and out the bumper cover. Just pushing the sleeves into place will basically hold the exhaust, but you want to use the spreading tool again to install the clamps over the sleeves. Also, if you look really closely at the clamp, you can see a little dimple. Just make sure that strap is aligned with the hole. So the sleeve has a dimple that matches up to the clamp. And you want the square end on top facing the back. That's how the factory does it. Install the carriage bolts with the square side into the square hole. And you'll have to squeeze it together a little bit in order to put the nuts on. So once again, you make sure the dimples line up and slide the clamp in place. Now we're just going to snug everything up a little bit so it doesn't fall off. It's not going to be tight yet, but it's going to be snug enough that the exhaust still moves around with some drag. This will let you position it later. So you'll be able to access these with the bumper cover back on. And this also allows you to move it side to side a little bit. You can also swivel it, adjust it exactly how you like. And this was an afterthought, but we realized these clamps really should be facing down so you can get to them from behind the engine. So we just rotated those clamps so the nut was downward. Now he's just pushing the tips down to make sure they'll clear the bumper cover. Now he's going to lower the car down a little bit to install the crash bumper. So these are the 4 13mm bolts on each side. And once they're tight, you're going to torque them to 18 pound-foot. He's just making sure the electrical connectors are out of the way for the bumper installation. And now he's going to lower the car a little bit to have better access. And carefully put the bumper into place. Make sure you line up the lines of the fender to the bumper. You can spend a couple minutes doing this if you'd like. Just make sure the lines look nice. Just make sure the bumper is pushed into place so all the bolts line up. And then make sure you install the correct bolts in the correct places. In this case, it's the silver bolts. And the black bolts are going to go in the middle. Make sure this light connector clips back into its correct location. And then just begin installing all the remaining screws. Remember, these are going to be the T25 screws when you actually put the fender liners in, but the bumper cover itself is going to use the T30 screws. And make sure these slip and assemble correctly. There's little tabs that make sure they line up in the right place. But it's pretty straightforward. And make sure the stud is installed correctly on that fender liner. All the electrical connectors should click into place when they're fully installed. So use the red connector for the lights themselves and the green connectors for the light bar on top. Don't forget the outer screw is going to be the gray screw with the cylinder. Just push these down and they should click into place. Don't forget to hook up the electrical connectors on the valve actuators and click them into place so they are held in their correct location. Now you'll want to start tightening things up. The V-band clamps we include and the 4 nuts that are on the sleeve clamps are all going to be torqued to the same value, which is 18 pound-foot. Double check to make sure you don't have any extra hardware or questions, and give us a call if you do. Before you drive the car, make sure you check for any kind of errors. Lower the engine cover, close the wing, and see if there's any kind of problems when you start the car. There should be no error codes or problems. So if you see any issues, give us a call and we can help you figure it out. All right. I think it's time for a beer.